Today we'll be talking about how we put together the pieces for a game launch. It'll be myself, Andrew Kasbari. I'm the Director of Product Management here for Unity's Game Growth Program, and I'm joined here today by Omar.
Hi, I'm Omar Abdelwahed. I'm the Tech Director of Eastside Games in Vancouver.
Thank you, Omar. Here's the agenda we'll be hitting today. First, we'll go through some of the development phases and a concept called stage gating that Omar will introduce you to shortly. Then we'll dive into the concept of soft launching, what you should be looking at during that soft launch process, as well as how you should measure the success of your soft launch. And eventually, the success of that soft launch will dictate now what? How do I go into my global launch? How should I head into live operations? Then we'll go through a bit of an example of a case study on how we would move through the stage gate process from concept to retention, monetization, and acquisition. And then we'll wrap it up with a summary.
So development phases and stage gates. Stage gates actually come from larger entertainment industries, even before games, as a means for a studio or a development company to realize success incrementally as they invest further in a project. This is separate and can be even more high level than your normal development process, which for many people is either agile or waterfall. This is a means to actually interact with your larger stakeholders of the company so that they can see progress at specific milestones and weigh in with feedback and decide to keep investing in a project. So the stage gates are largely broken down into concept, where the big idea that we have of this game and we want to describe and get out there is presented. And then pre-production and production, where for all of us, that's where the larger and most of the development work happens. And then we get into the notion of stages of launch, starting with a soft launch, with a small group of live players to realize success with them before we launch to all territories worldwide for all players to see the game. And then finally, sort of added at the end here, not necessarily traditionally a stage gate, but the notion of now this is a live game as a service that you need to operate over time successfully. So the concept phase, this is maybe the most fun part. You have a great idea. What's your great idea? You want to make an RPG. You want to make a hyper-casual game. So you describe this idea and you socialize it typically internally to your studio, to stakeholders to say, hey, this game we think is fun. And it's important to outline what is the fun in the game. You will see we'll talk a lot about data as well. But what is the core fun? Why should anyone play this? And that goes hand in hand with the design of the game. As well, who's this game for? Who's the audience of this game? A great thing to note, again, is if you're the audience and solely the audience of this game, which is something myself and many game developers make the mistake of doing, you should maybe reconsider that. Is that the audience that you're going after, and will that be a successful game? What is the core conceit, which again is a larger entertainment term? What is the idea that creates a suspension of disbelief? I'm carrying a sword, I'm a warrior in this RPG, those kind of things. You may have some sort of demonstrable idea of your game to show people. It could be as simple as a PowerPoint or something on the back of a napkin for that matter. Or some people already start getting into a playable because they have a wealth of resources to build upon. You will play through these ideas in concept until you get to a point that you can show the value of this game to stakeholders, at the end of this stage, where they will evaluate and decide to move you to the next stage and invest in further resources of this game. So the important concept again is there is an intro and an outro to each of these stages. And what you're doing is you're setting up the team for success. You're saying, hey, in this stage, we'd like to see these kind of ideas realized. And at the end of the stage, you will demonstrate it to us, and we will decide, the stakeholders, that it was successful and give you a go, no go, or you need to change a few things and come back, that kind of idea. So pre-production and production, this is the core of the development work. This is where you're going to scope the rest of what you need to build before you launch the game. What is your, besides the engineering aspect and the development of the implementation of the mechanics, what is the overall game design? What is your growth strategy, your marketing strategy? How are you going to acquire users? How are you going to monetize those users? What is the core loop of the game, the main part of the game that users will be playing through? These are the things to be planned and realized throughout pre-production and production of the game. So then you finally make this game and you think it's a great game. You need to start play testing with your users. And so this notion of soft launch is those small amount of users you can test this game with in territories around the world that may monetize less, and so you can make changes with them iteratively before you show a larger audience in the entire world. So you want to test your core gameplay here. You want to see both through analytics that players are successfully moving through your game and they're hitting the beats that you expect, that they're moving through your game in a way that makes sense to them and makes sense to you in the way that you planned. Ideally, you do this over a number of months. We put down here 3+ months. The longer, the better, that you can realize success before going to a large audience. So again, this is an opportunity to see how well your game acquires users through that strategy you came up with in production, how well they stick around, so how well they retain and play your game further through all the content, and how well they monetize. Some amount of the players need to convert to keep the game running so that you make revenue. And as you realize this data, you will make changes to maximize core metrics that you've decided upon through acquisition, retention, and monetization.
All right, thanks, Omar, for teeing that up. I'll walk you now through a bit of the soft launch checklist. What are the main things that you should be thinking about and doing during the soft launch process? So first and foremost is your user acquisition strategy. One of the main goals of the soft launch is to drive users into your game and evaluate how are they progressing through my game? How are they retaining? Is there pain points that I need to fix? And so starting with a strong user acquisition strategy, figuring out the countries that you should be targeting for this soft launch, how much you should be paying per user, the type of ad channels that you should be acquiring these users from, and eventually trying to figure out what is my payback window and what are my return on ad spend goals. In order to do user acquisition sustainably, you need to be able to generate more revenue from the users that you're bringing into your game than you're spending to acquire them. Along with that, the first-time user experience is super important. So you'll want to look at the early retention metrics like day 1 and day 3 retention. First-time user experience completion percentage is a bit of a misleading KPI. Because people may actually just play the tutorial and then stop playing. So you want to go a little bit further deeper into the funnel there. Something else that I can actually mention here is you'll want to actually instrument your game with the proper analytics even before you start a lot of this. You'll want to instrument the game with early funnel metrics, like if you have let's just say a game with levels, you'll want to instrument the first few levels just to see how people are actually progressing through those levels, and seeing whether they're actually also falling off out of those levels. And then you'll also want to add retention features or retention mechanics. These are types of mechanics like a daily login bonus, a daily reward, engaging them with push notifications, anything that can help drive re-engagement into the game as well as continuous engagement in the game. This kind of falls under a little bit of the live operations section as well, but it is also important to think about during soft launch, which is what are my event cadences going to be? How do I keep the game fresh? How do I keep users engaged? Is this types of quest mechanics where the user has to complete 5 different number of quests in order to get a reward? Or is anything related to events in the game, and again, with the purpose of keeping the game fresh. Then monetization. The last two here, monetization and early conversions, are kind of related. Monetization is obviously a very important part of your game's sustainability. You need to be able to actually have your users monetize, whether that be from in-app purchases or watching ads, in order to actually create a sustainable business out of your game. And this ties back to the first point on user acquisition and your return on ad spend goals. Your return on ad spend and your payback windows are actually going to be heavily dictated by how you're actually monetizing your players. So this one can include an early conversion mechanic like a starter pack. It can include making sure that you have a robust economy in your game, making sure that you're integrating rewarded advertising in the right spots. For example, if a user is getting stuck somewhere, continuously dying, you may want to hit them with a rewarded ad in order to let them progress past that level. These are just some examples of mechanics and strategies that you'll want to look at during your soft launch, or that you'll want to incorporate during your soft launch, excuse me. And then next, it's all about measurement. Like Omar said, coming out of each of these stages is all about what gets me out of that stage and then what gets me into the next stage. And for the soft launch process, your payback window, how long does it take me to make my money back on my user acquisition? What is my return on ad spend? What are my early and late retention metrics? And this can go from D1 up to D90 if you'd like. What are my IAP conversion rates? What are my ad effective cost per mils, or how much revenue do I generate from every 1,000 ads that I show? And holistically, what is the revenue, the average revenue per daily active user within my game? These are all some metrics that you should be looking at to evaluate whether your game should come out of soft launch.
So you've made it through soft launch. So now what? You're going to now look at releasing this game worldwide. And one of the things you need to do is, particularly for free-to-play games where content is directly related to monetization, you want to have enough content pre-created before you hit your worldwide audience, so you can stay ahead of the curve as they consume that content online. Your players will maybe even surprisingly consume content at a very rapid pace. So you need to have enough content, and it's different for all games, in the bucket, so to speak, before you go live. These events that we talk about are a particular type of content that are timed, typically. They have a begin and an end and special rewards that are unique from the rest of the game. And as such, they typically drive revenue more than anything in the game. And you will see spikes in traffic around the start of them as people just dash through the door to try to play these fun events in your game. So now you're going to launch with the content that you think is the most appropriate. Up to now, making the game was sort of primary in our minds and is something we often as game developers concentrate on. But the truth is, the real work starts when you go live. And you are now operating a live game as a service, 24/7, worldwide. So if you're successful, there's people always playing. You need to have events that are scheduled for at regular intervals that your players are aware of and enjoy and decide to play, that drive-by, if you will, using an old television term. that they know Monday at noon is this type of event, and there's going to be these huge rewards, and I just got to get in there. You need to also be aware of how well the game is operating through a number of technical means, and fix issues in the game, both physical technical issues and content issues, while the game is operating, and be able to update the game in near real time, with hopefully not bringing it down while people are playing, ideally. You need a customer service team who can interact with your player base. And it's really important here that this is, we more and more use the word community rather than customer service. These are proactive members of your studio who are interacting with people to get them excited and to hear how things are going. They're, consumer advocates that want to hear that, oh, we really like this, but we didn't like that. And they take that feedback and give it back to the development team to be able to improve the game over time. So they're not just waiting for a mistake to happen. They're out there reaching out on every social media channel possible, and in other ways to cater to your player base. This goes towards increasing engagement, and this goes to your larger network of media that supports your game to keep it active.
Great, thank you, Omar. So now we want to kind of show the audience of how Omar and I would actually walk through the stage gate process ourselves, from coming up with a core mechanic, thinking about our user acquisition strategy, how we would retain users in this game, and then lastly, how we would generate revenue, how we would actually monetize the game. I actually heard that Omar has a bit of a good idea on a new game concept.
I have this great idea. I just thought about it over lunch. We're sitting in the studio, run into each other. I have coffee in my hand. I'm like, I got this great idea. It's called One of Us. And you're in a spaceship with like all these other players. And you're just running around doing the things you do in a spaceship. But like somebody is sabotaging the spaceship, and you got to figure out who that is. And it largely surrounds, might sound suspiciously familiar. We'll just ignore that. That person is a player along with everybody else. And there's this core mechanic that's essentially a bluffing mechanic. So everybody kind of looks the same. Maybe they're of different colors, and they're presumably helping to run the ship. Meanwhile, one person randomly is pretending to be one of us, but is actually sabotaging the ship and maybe killing off people one at a time. So that's the core conceit, the core mechanic in there. You might imagine that there's time-based goals that you have to, as a normal player, that you have to achieve before let's call them the imposter, sabotages the ship and or kills people. So you have this sort of PvP aspect as well as a cooperative aspect from those that are the other players. And then there's potentially more mechanics around time-based or appointment-based mechanics, much like you see in other games where you have to collect something after a certain amount of time, and then you go away and it'll generate more stuff and you can come back and collect it again, just to keep the engagement going, the retention going with the players.
Yeah, that's I love this idea. It sounds quite familiar and actually quite popular.
Yeah.
I think something we're going to have to think about here is, it's a very PvP focused game. It'll require us to think about how do we bring a real-time multiplayer component to it. And it really requires a strong user base to have great matchmaking. So I think we should maybe think about, maybe going to mobile where there's just tons of players, huge scale, where matchmaking may not be a problem. And then to kind of riff on that a little bit as well, the whole game is about social aspects of gaming. So I think we can even start to think about how we can utilize those social aspects in our user acquisition strategy, how people can get their friends to play the game by word of mouth, We can maybe even incorporate some sort of sharing components within the game, and potentially even reward sharing. Playing these types of games with your friends are super fun, and there's nothing better than organic users. An organic user it costs you nothing, but can still generate a high LTV. What do you think about that?
I think that's a great idea. We might even do a push notification when one of your friends starts a new game, so that you know to jump in right at that time, which of course will keep retention up.
Yeah, I love that. And then I think there's when we think about keeping retention up actually, and getting people to continuously come back to the game, we know that gamers are inherently competitive, right? Like they love to have competition in these types of PvP games. So my vote would be for making sure that we have a really good leaderboard system, something that can help gamers feel as if they are progressing up leaderboards or staying competitive. And hey, if we grow big enough, maybe we'll even have an esports component to this in the future.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And we could attribute scaling rewards for the top X number of players on the leaderboards, and we could divide the leaderboards into regions versus worldwide, and really make it more personal on one level or more epic on a worldwide scale on the other. Yeah, that's a really good idea. I like that.
Awesome.
How do you think we'll make money?
Yeah,
we gotta make money.
You took the words right out of my mouth. I know. In this type of game, I'd say maybe something like skins, right? So maybe we can sell certain types of skins or hats or outfits, just so instead of having a single character type, we can allow for players to actually personalize their little in-game whatever you want to call it, player.
Yeah, that's super cool. And we could even drive, further monetization with holiday specific skins. There could be a pumpkin hat for Halloween. We could maybe do pets. You get special pets. So maybe there's a black cat only in Halloween versus something related during the later holidays like Christmas and getting into the new year and everything. Yeah, I could see that actually doing quite well.
Yeah. I would definitely go for the black cat. I'm clearly that would be my favorite. And then I think something we shouldn't forget is trying to monetize those first time players and including those types of starter pack promotions. Maybe if it's your first time playing, you get a awesome potential in-game currency pack, or a one-time skin for only 99 cents. And I think that can help with that first-time conversion. Because once we get that first-time conversion, I think the subsequent conversions actually come a lot easier. So nice idea. I love it. Let's go.
Let's go do this. Let's make it.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Omar. Let me come back and kind of summarize this for all of you. So first of all, we want to make sure that we can kind of, again, like we said, summarize everything that we just talked about, because we do really believe that going through this stage gate process, evaluating your game from an analytics perspective, having a strategy around your launch is really important. So first and foremost, always map out your development phases and your stage gates at the concept phase. You always want to be thinking farther ahead, like we did during that little riff back and forth. We started with a game concept, but we made it all the way to the monetization phase from a, again, conceptual basis. You want to identify upfront who the game is for, the elements of fun and the mechanics. I love what Omar said about, if I'm building this game for myself, it may not always be the best idea. So make sure to validate those game ideas with friends, with family, with your studio, random people on the street. Then you want to make sure you plan your strategies early on for acquisition, for both organic and paid, as well as your retention strategies and your monetization strategies. Organic installs are free installs, and they can really drive value for your game. But also at the same time, well done user acquisition can really help your game scale. But you don't want to forget about how you keep those players in the game and how you monetize them after you acquire them. And then test, iterate, etc. You always want to go back and forth and keep trying to improve little parts of your game. Don't get discouraged when the retention metrics are not great the first time around. You can always add mechanics and polish up the game. And then lastly, launching the game is just the beginning. Live operations and running a live game is the way that the gaming industry is moving. Games are alive, right? And players want to continuously engage with a live game. It keeps them engaged, keeps them interested, and it benefits you as a studio. And that's a wrap. Thank you to the audience watching this. Thank you so much, Omar, for taking your time out of your day to record this with us. I wanted to give a little bit of insights into our different programs that are available for the indie community. First and foremost is our Game Growth Program. It's a new program that was launched a few weeks ago, and it essentially helps indie developers bring their games to market with funding support, operational support, and technology support. So if you have a game, a live mobile free-to-play title, you can head over to this link and apply to the program. Thank you so much, Omar.
Thank you.
Cool. Take care, everyone.
Andrew and Omar, thank you so much for being here with us today, for preparing this great talk. And I know that you're both based in California and Vancouver, so it's a huge time difference for you. And yeah, that's why, it's like you're double awesome for taking your time and sharing this with our viewers. Seeing it from all over Europe, Eastern Europe, Russia, and yeah. So I will ask the audience to provide questions, and I actually have one idea. If anyone who's listening for us right now has a game idea that guys can walk through the stages, you can put it in the comment section, and we will ask guys to do it on the go. And first, I see Arthur in the Q&A section from Pentacle Studio. He mentioned that one idea that can be added to your talk to provide a special games guest items, get it from the item beholder, and connect real things to game reality. For example, user can become spy only for special QR code, which can be found on this thing. For example, spy ahead, etc. What do you think about it? Yes.
That's interesting. If it's meant to be location-based, where you're in the real world and you come across a QR code, or that's meant to be a way for people to physically interact with each other, there's a number of location-based games do that. Not a lot that are successful. The biggest issue with location-based games is density of players. So if you played Pokemon Go, for example, there are so many people that love Pokemon. So the density of players is pretty, there's a lot of players around the world that would be playing that game. If you've just come up with a new game that requires people to interact around the world, the biggest problem is having enough players in any one city or town to interact with each other. So you have to be careful how those mechanics work. Large cities might be very successful right away, but not everybody lives in a large city. So that's the hardest thing with those types of games. Mechanically, that is. It's a fun idea for sure.
Yeah, thank you for commenting on that. So my question is, does it work for every game? So I think what I hear is more the stages are more relevant, for example, mobile free-to-play game, right? Does it work for premium as well, or how it works, for example, for PC game? Does it have to be like changed or something? What do you think?
Stage gating is a concept that started even before games in other entertainment like movies and television. And I was using it in AAA games well before doing mobile. So, my background, I used to work at Ubisoft, as well as a number of other publishers. Particularly, I did a Ghost Recon game where we did stage gates, and from concept to pre-production, prod, etc., we had to prove the value of the game all along. And in that particular instance, it was very much driven by an editorial group that did nothing but sit on all the games and decide that they were successful at each gate. So yeah, it's not a mobile specific thing at all.
And I would add one thing to that. I think regardless of the platform that you're distributing on, it's always important to understand the sustainability of your game. Is this something that can continue to grow if you put marketing money into it? On mobile, it's a lot easier to do specific user acquisition, acquiring individual users at a time. Maybe on PC console, you're doing more brand marketing. It still costs money, and so you still need to understand the return of that marketing spend in order to continue scaling your game up.
Does it matter how big the team is, or like how on which stage are they to start thinking about those stages? I mean, like if you're just a two-person like indie, I don't mean the hobby development, but just like starting out, do you need to think so far ahead, or you just focus on the product first and then you just like at which moment you need to start if you're just a beginner, for example?
Yeah, that's the benefit of the stage gate as well, and just any iterative process. You invest in resources as you prove the game out over time. So to start with, you could be one person with an idea that you want to vet and prove out to a group of stakeholders, maybe the people that are the executives of the studio. And as you prove your idea through the different stages, you'll add resources, including people, tools, money, of course, to help you succeed. And the toughest thing in a stage gate in any game project is to decide, it's not a great idea after all, and we're going to stop and do something else. But that allows you to not overextend, not spend too much money, time, and people in your idea.
Thank you for answering that, because our audience is like pretty different from developers at different stages. So it's great that it's universal, because it is really important that you have a kind of a guideline to go. I mean, it's because so many developers, they start late on some stage, so they will like think about monetization like after they finished like the game and actually pitched it to publishers, and then they're starting to change their monetization model. So that's very different. And I would like to ask how Unity does Unity have any new tools to help out developers in the sort to go through the stages?
Yeah, I was going to give a shameless self-plug on the previous question.
I just allowed you, yeah.
Yeah, perfect. So yeah, I mean that, the whole, one of the main concepts behind Unity is to democratize game development. That's always been the core principle behind our engine. And now we have a whole slew of operate solutions that can actually help you, move through those later parts of the stage gate when you get to the monetization, the user acquisition, the analytics, the player engagement, the live ops parts. So our whole tools are built so that small studios, whether it be one person or a larger studio of hundreds of people, can actually live operate a game. So anything from our Delta DNA product around analytics and player engagement, our multiplayer products, Vivox and Multiplay. Our ad network for ad monetization. We have an IAP product as well that allows you to do real money transactions, and of course the core engine that you use to build your game. So absolutely. And then last thing is, we just recently, about three weeks ago, launched a program called Game Growth, which was in the end of that presentation. It's a program that helps indie studios basically get off the ground with funding and human resources access. So they'll get access to a team of dedicated experts, user acquisition manager, monetization manager. So anyone can apply to this program. If you have a a live mobile free-to-play game. It's just on the Unity website. You can just Google it. It's called Game Growth.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. And Omar, you're probably, I presume, you're using Unity right now. Yeah, so maybe any tips for the developers on how to work with an engine and all of the tools, or maybe you can point out something where you have not just the problems, but would you say like something you had to figure out and how you made work for you? Maybe some tips. Yeah.
Yeah. So I've done my fair share of indie development, from being a single developer on my own to a successful studio. Maybe the most powerful thing about Unity that I love is the Unity Asset Store, which is essentially a community of like-minded game developers that contribute pieces that help you in your game. You should absolutely take advantage of that. I have done entire concept pitches using nothing but the Unity Asset Store and even a free license of Unity to create a very polished looking concept. And I've done that as a team of one person and a team of 15, 20 people. And it's very low cost. There's a lot of free assets. There's a lot of professional assets that just cost a little bit of money. It's worth it, and you can really make an astounding demonstration of your idea. So that's one tip, particularly for independent developers. The other thing is, if you can come up with one good idea, you can come up with many good ideas. And so, you're going to have a lot of failures, and that's going to help you on your next idea. And the real value, the real intellectual property, or IP, is you, not the game. And that's really important, because the game didn't make itself. So if your game fails, that doesn't mean you're bad or you're a failure or you can't do better. That just means you learned something, and the next one will be better because of it. So, keep trying. You'll get there.
Thank you. That was a good inspirational ending. I mean, I see that there are no questions in the chat, so I will not take you any longer from your early mornings. Thank you so much for tuning in, for providing content and sharing it. Yeah, it means a lot. And guys in the chat, enjoy the rest of the conference today and see you tomorrow. Yeah. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Ciao.